The acquisition announcement listed the buyer as an external investment firm. The corporate registry listed me as the primary shareholder of that firm. Both documents were filed on the same day. I received the company-wide email on a Thursday afternoon. Subject line: Important announcement, change in ownership. The message came from our CEO, Richard Brennan. He informed us that the company had been acquired by Meridian Capital Partners. The transaction closed yesterday. All employment contracts would be honored. Operations would continue as normal. He thanked everyone for their dedication during the transition period. I'd been removed from my position 6 weeks earlier. Richard had called me into his office, said my role as senior financial analyst was being eliminated. Budget restructuring. The company needed to reduce headcount in non-essential positions. He offered me 2 weeks severance. I'd worked there for 4 years. The termination letter cited position elimination due to organizational realignment. It was dated September 15th. The acquisition announcement was dated October 27th. I opened the attached press release. Meridian Capital Partners had acquired 87% of the company's outstanding shares. Purchase price, $4.2 million. The transaction gave them controlling interest and board majority. I read it twice. Then I opened my personal files, found the corporate documents I'd filed 3 weeks earlier. Meridian Capital Partners, LLC, registered in Delaware. Principal owner, Lauren Chen. That was me. One of the junior analysts passed my desk. "Lauren," she said quietly, "did you see the announcement?" "I did," I said. She looked confused but didn't ask more. I returned to my screen and started reviewing. The timeline was clear in my files. September 15th, termination notice received. September 16th, severance agreement delivered. 2 weeks pay, standard release of claims. September 17th, I contacted an employment attorney. Her name was Margaret Whitfield. She specialized in wrongful termination cases. I'd found her through a legal directory, paid for a consultation, brought my termination letter and employment contract. She reviewed everything. "They're citing position elimination," she said. "Do you know if the position actually being eliminated?" "I don't know yet. If they rehire for the same role or reassign the duties, that's potentially problematic. Keep documentation of anything you see." I thanked her, paid her fee, left. I didn't sign the severance agreement. September 20th, I received a follow-up email from HR. Subject: severance agreement, signature required. The email reminded me that the 2-week severance was contingent on signing the release. If I didn't sign by September 25th, the offer would be withdrawn. I didn't respond. September 22nd, I registered Meridian Capital Partners, LLC in Delaware. The filing cost $200. I was listed as the sole member and manager. Registered agent, a service company in Wilmington. I funded the LLC with $5,000 from my personal savings. September 23rd, I began researching the company's ownership structure. We were a privately held analytics firm, 42 employees. Revenue, approximately $6 million annually. Profitable, but not growing quickly. The company had been founded 12 years ago by 3 partners. Over time, they'd brought in outside investors to fund expansion. Current ownership structure. Richard Brennan, CEO, 31%. 2 other founders, 18% each. 4 outside investors, varying stakes totaling 33%. I'd learned this during my 4 years as a financial analyst. I'd prepared board reports, reviewed cap tables, analyzed shareholder agreements. I knew who owned what. I also knew something Richard didn't know I knew. 2 of the outside investors had been trying to exit for over a year. I'd seen their correspondence with Richard. They wanted to liquidate their positions, needed capital for other ventures, had asked Richard multiple times about buyback options. He'd declined, said the company didn't have the cash. Those two investors held 22% combined. September 25th, I contacted the first investor. His name was James Park. He owned 12% of the company. I'd met him twice during board presentations. I sent him an email from my personal account. Subject: Investment Opportunity Inquiry. I introduced myself, reminded him we'd met during board meetings, said I was exploring opportunities to invest in the company and understood he might be interested in selling his stake. Asked if he'd be willing to discuss terms. He responded within 2 hours. Yes, I'd be interested. When would you like to talk? We scheduled a call for September 27th. September 27th. The call lasted 30 minutes. James was direct. He wanted out. He'd invested 7 years ago. The company was stable, but not generating the returns he needed. He'd asked Richard about a buyback multiple times. What would you want for your stake? I asked. I paid $420,000 7 years ago. Given the company's current revenue and profit margins, I'd take $550,000. I did the math. That valued the company at approximately $4.6 million. Let me review my financing options, I said. I'll get back to you by October 1st. September 28th. I contacted the second investor. Her name was Patricia Gomez. She owned 10%. Same approach, same introduction, same question. She was even more eager than James. I've been trying to exit for 18 months, she said. Richard won't buy me out. The other founders aren't interested. I'll sell at a reasonable price just to get my capital back. What would that be? I invested $350,000. I'd take $450,000. Similar valuation to James's offer. I'll be in touch, I said. September 29th. I started looking for financing. I had $47,000 in personal savings. I owned my apartment, bought 5 years ago, now worth approximately $280,000, with $190,000 remaining on the mortgage. Total liquid and semi-liquid assets, roughly $140,000 if I refinanced. James wanted $550,000. Patricia wanted $450,000. Total, $1 million. I needed additional capital. I contacted 3 business lenders, explained I was acquiring shares in a profitable private company, provided financial statements I'd prepared during my employment. One lender was interested, said they could offer $600,000 secured against the acquired shares plus a personal guarantee. Interest rate, 8.5%. Term, 5 years. I requested a formal offer letter. September 30th. I received the loan commitment. $600,000 available, contingent on finalizing the share purchase agreements and providing proof of the company's financial stability. I had what I needed. October 1st. I contacted James and Patricia, told them I could move forward, asked them to draft share purchase agreements with their attorneys. James responded immediately, said he'd have documents ready by October 5th. Patricia responded the same day, said she'd send her agreement by October 6th. I didn't tell them I was buying both stakes. Didn't tell them I'd been terminated. Just proceeded with the transactions. October 5th. I received James's purchase agreement, 12 pages, standard terms. He would sell his 12% stake for $550,000. Closing date, October 15th. I reviewed it, signed it, returned it. October 6th. I received Patricia's agreement. Similar terms. She would sell her 10% for $450,000. Closing date, October 16th. I signed, returned it. October 7th. I finalized the loan, provided both purchase agreements to the lender. They confirmed approval, sent closing documents. I signed everything. The loan would fund on October 14th. October 8th. I researched the remaining shareholders. James and Patricia's combined 22% would give me a significant stake, but not control. I needed more. The two other founders, Richard's original partners, each held 18%. I'd worked with both of them during my employment. They were less involved than Richard, semi-retired, attended quarterly board meetings, but didn't manage day-to-day operations. I found their contact information, sent careful inquiries. One didn't respond. The other, Michael Torres, replied. I might be interested, depending on the offer. I'm 64 and thinking about retirement. Let's talk. We scheduled a call for October 10th. October 10th. Michael was straightforward. I've been in this company for 12 years. I'm tired. Richard runs everything anyway. If the price is right, I'll sell. What would you need? My 18% stake. At the company's current valuation, that's worth around $830,000. I'd take $800,000. I didn't have $800,000. But if I acquired James and Patricia's stakes first, I'd have 22% ownership. That would give me leverage to negotiate financing for additional purchases. Let me get back to you, I said. October 12th. I refined my strategy. If I acquired James's 12% and Patricia's 10%, I'd own 22%. If I then acquired Michael's 18%, I'd own 40%. That wouldn't be majority control, but it would be the largest single shareholder position, larger than Richard's 31%. With 40%, I could influence board decisions, could demand seats, could force changes. But I wanted more certainty. I reviewed the shareholder agreement, found Section 9.3, Sale of the Company. Any sale of more than 50% of the company's outstanding shares triggers a mandatory purchase option for remaining shareholders at the same per-share price offered to selling shareholders. If I could acquire 50% plus, the other shareholders would have to either sell to me at the same price or accept me as majority owner. I needed to acquire 51% minimum. James, 12%. Patricia, 10%. Michael, 18%. Total, 40%. I needed another 11% plus. I reviewed the other shareholders. The remaining outside investors held small stakes, between 3% and 6% each. I started making calls. October 13th. I contacted 3 smaller investors. First, David Chen, 6% stake. He was interested, wanted $270,000. Second, Samantha Rhodes, 3% stake, also interested, wanted $140,000. Third, Robert Kim, 2% stake, not interested, happy with his passive investment. If I acquired David and Samantha's stakes, James, 12%, Patricia, 10%, Michael, 18%, David, 6%, Samantha, 3%. Total, 49%. Still short of majority, but I'd identified one more possibility. An early employee had been granted 4% equity 8 years ago. Her name was Jennifer Lau. She'd left the company 5 years ago, but still held her shares. I found her on LinkedIn. Sent a message. She responded within a day. I'd definitely sell. I've been holding these shares forever. They're not liquid and I can't do anything with them. Make me an offer. $180,000 for your 4%. Deal. Send me the paperwork. October 14th. I now had commitments for 53% of the company. James, 12%, $550,000. Patricia, 10%, $450,000. Michael, 18%, $800,000. David, 6%, $270,000. Samantha, 3%, $140,000. Jennifer, 4%, $180,000. Total, 53% for $2,390,000. I had a loan commitment for $600,000. I had personal capital of approximately $140,000 if I refinanced my apartment. I needed another $1,650,000. October 15th. I contacted a private equity firm, explained I was assembling a majority stake in a profitable analytics company. Current revenue, $6 million. EBITDA, approximately $900,000. Needed capital to complete the acquisition. They asked for financials, business plan, details on the target company. I provided everything. They responded. October 18th. Willing to provide $1.7 million. In exchange, they'd take 35% of Meridian Capital Partners. I'd retain 65% ownership of Meridian, which would own 53% of the target company. Terms were aggressive, but workable. I accepted. October 20th. All financing was in place. I had $600,000 business loan, $140,000 personal capital, $1,700,000 PE investment. Total, $2,440,000. Enough to complete all 6 acquisitions. October 21st. I began closing the transactions. All share purchases were structured to close simultaneously on October 26th. Sellers would transfer their shares. I'd wire payment. Meridian Capital Partners would be registered as the new shareholder. October 26th. The closings completed. 6 transactions. 6 wire transfers. Total, $2,390,000. By end of day, Meridian Capital Partners owned 53% of the company. I owned 65% of Meridian Capital Partners. Effective ownership, 34.5% direct control, with Meridian holding majority voting rights. October 27th. The company announced the acquisition. Richard's email went out mid-afternoon, the one I'd read at my desk. He didn't know yet that I controlled Meridian. The corporate filings wouldn't be updated for several days. He just knew that an entity called Meridian Capital Partners had acquired majority ownership. The press release made no mention of me. I sat at my desk. I'd been allowed to work out my 2-week notice after declining the severance, and read the announcement. No one in the office knew. I kept working. October 28th. Richard called an all-staff meeting. Subject: Town Hall, Ownership Transition. Scheduled for 2 p.m. Everyone attended. The conference room was full. Richard stood at the front. As you all saw yesterday, we've completed a transaction with Meridian Capital Partners. They now hold majority ownership. I want to assure everyone that this is a positive development. The new investors believe in our mission and want to support growth. Someone asked, will there be layoffs? No immediate plans for workforce changes. We're focused on stability and growth. Another question. Who are the new owners? Meridian is a private investment firm. They've done extensive due diligence. They understand our business model and value our team. He didn't mention me. Didn't mention that one of the investors had recently been terminated. The meeting ended after 20 minutes. I returned to my desk. My official last day was October 29th, 2 weeks from my termination notice. I had one more day. October 29th. My last day as an employee. I completed my final tasks, closed out my projects, returned my laptop and access badge to IT. No one said goodbye. No farewell lunch. I left at 5 p.m. Drove home. October 30th. The board meeting was scheduled. Meridian Capital Partners, as majority shareholder, had the right to call an emergency board meeting. I'd sent the notice on October 27th, right after the acquisition announcement. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. at a law office in downtown Boston. Attendees: Richard Brennan, the 2 remaining founders, the remaining minority shareholders, and myself, as representative of Meridian Capital Partners. I arrived at 8:55 a.m. Richard was already there. So were the 2 other founders. Richard saw me walk in. His expression changed. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Representing Meridian Capital Partners." "You?" "I'm the managing member." Silence. "You own Meridian?" 65%. A PE firm owns 35%. Meridian owns 53% of this company. He stared. "You bought the company?" "I acquired a controlling stake." The other founders were listening now. One of them spoke. "Is this legal?" "Completely. All transactions were properly documented and closed. The share purchase agreements are filed with the state." Richard's face was red now, but he didn't yell. "Why?" "That's not relevant to today's agenda." "This is insane." "The meeting starts in 3 minutes. Please take your seat." The board meeting began at 9 a.m. I chaired it. First order of business: board composition. As majority shareholder, Meridian had the right to appoint 3 of 5 board seats. I appointed myself and 2 representatives from the PE firm. Richard and 1 other founder retained their seats as minority representatives. Second order of business: officer roles. I proposed that Richard remain as CEO for a transitional period. Compensation unchanged, subject to performance review in 90 days. The board voted, passed. Third order of business: review of recent personnel decisions. I raised the issue of my termination. On September 15th, I was terminated for alleged position elimination. I'd like to review whether that position was actually eliminated. Richard said nothing. I continued. I've reviewed subsequent job postings. The company advertised for a senior financial analyst position on September 28th. Same responsibilities as my previous role. That suggests the position wasn't eliminated, just that I was replaced. Still silence. Under Massachusetts employment law, termination for stated cause must be accurate. If the stated reason was false, that's wrongful termination. One of the founders spoke. "What are you asking for?" "I'm not asking for anything. I'm noting a discrepancy in corporate records. The termination letter stated position elimination. The job posting contradicts that. I'd like this corrected in company records." Richard finally spoke. "What do you want?" "I want an acknowledgement that the termination was not for position elimination, and I want the severance I was denied when I didn't sign the release." "How much?" 2 weeks' pay was the original offer. Given the circumstances, I think 6 months is more appropriate. "That's extortion." "That's a settlement offer. The alternative is litigation for wrongful termination, which would be costly and public. I'd prefer to resolve this quietly." The board discussed, voted, approved a settlement: 6 months severance plus correction of termination records, plus a mutual non-disparagement agreement. The meeting ended at 11 a.m. November 1st. I received the settlement payment: 6 months' salary, $67,500, plus the 2-week severance originally offered, $5,200. Total, $72,700. After taxes, approximately $52,000. I deposited it. November 15th. Richard submitted his resignation. The board accepted it effective December 31st. In his resignation letter, he cited personal reasons and desire to pursue other opportunities. No mention of the acquisition circumstances. December 1st. The board appointed an interim CEO, one of the PE firm representatives, experienced operator, would stabilize operations while we searched for permanent leadership. I continued in my board role, but didn't take an operational position. December 15th. I reviewed the company's financial performance since the acquisition. Revenue was stable. Client retention, 94%. Employee turnover, minimal, aside from Richard's departure. The transition had been smooth. January 2025. The company hired a new permanent CEO. External candidate. Strong background in analytics. No connection to the previous ownership. She started January 15th, February 2025. I stepped back from the board, remained as Meridian's representative, but attended meetings remotely rather than in person. Focused on my PE firm partnership. They had other portfolio companies that needed attention. The analytics company continued operating, profitable, growing modestly. No drama. March 2025. I reviewed my overall position. I'd invested approximately $140,000 of personal capital, taken on $600,000 in debt, given up 35% of Meridian to the PE firm, but I controlled a company worth approximately $4.5 million. My effective stake, 34.5% of $4.5 million, equals approximately $1.5 million. Less debt, $1.5 million to $600,000 equals $900,000 in equity value. Not wealthy, but significantly better than 2 weeks severance. More importantly, resolved on my terms. The company that had dismissed me as non-essential now operated under governance I controlled. The CEO who had eliminated my position had resigned rather than report to me. The employment records had been corrected. I'd been made whole. Nothing dramatic, nothing public, just contract law, corporate governance, and patient execution, the way it should have been from the start.